Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us virtually for this April 5th 2022 meeting of the Capital Area Architectural and Planning Board. I hope you are all enjoying this arrival of spring, although it doesn't feel very springy today. I am Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. I am the chair of this meeting. You may see my name listed as Jane Sidley. I am not Jane Sidley. I simply forgot my computer at home. So now that that is out of the way, you all know that it's me. So I now call the meeting to order, giving the uncertainty of this moment with the spread of COVID-19. As this meeting was being planned, I again determined that we'd be best served by a virtual meeting. Members of the public can view this meeting via a live stream on the board's YouTube channel, and a recording of this meeting will remain available there following the meeting. So as has been the practice in recent meetings, board members, please use the raise hand function in Teams if you wish to be recognized. Please also limit your use of the chat to technology or other non-substantive issues so that the members of the public can more fully experience our meeting this afternoon. As has been the practice for our virtual meetings, we will determine if a quorum is present by conducting a roll call. In addition to establishing that a quorum is present, I would also use this opportunity to learn a little bit more about one another. In addition to indicating that you are present, please also share your favorite sign of spring's arrival. So I will go first. My favorite sign of spring's arrival is the red-winged blackbirds coming back to the community, and in particular as I am hiking around Westwood Nature Center in St. Louis Park, which is my favorite spot to go. And then I will turn it over to Dana Badgerow.
Yes, thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Dana Badgerow, I'm here, and my favorite sign of spring is also birdie. It's just these wonderful birds that are just so prolific right now. As we go for our walks, we just hear birds, birds, birds everywhere. It drives my dog crazy, of course.
Wonderful, thank you. Dr. Kate Bean. I don't believe Dr. Bean is present today. Alicia Belton.
Good afternoon, Alicia Belton, and I think my favorite spring, I'll say two things. I'm hearing the birds chirp early in the morning, so just kind of waking you up, so it's just a nice reminder that they're back. And then also I love seeing the trees budding, so like every day just looking out and seeing how they're just coming alive. So just wish the temperatures would follow now. So.
As do I. Representative Freiberg.
Hi, I'm Mike Freiberg. One of my favorite things to do right early in the spring is get on a bike. So when it's warm enough to be able to do that again, I know spring has sprung.
Thank you, Representative. James Garrett Jr. Don Grundhauser. Representative Hertas. James McLean.
Hey, good afternoon. My favorite, I just celebrated a birthday actually on last Friday. Yes, April 1st, and I've heard all of the April Fool's jokes. But that's typically my favorite sign of spring is birthday, which I actually celebrated outside of my home for the first birthday in 2 years. So very exciting.
Very exciting. Happy birthday, James. Senator Nelson. Senator Pappas.
Present, and I'm afraid I don't really believe it's spring until the lilacs blossom. Then I guess it is spring.
Absolutely, very fair. And Daniel Yang. Okay, we are smaller, but we are a group today, but we are still mighty. So we will move right along here. A quorum is present. As noted here, we have a full agenda today for today's meeting. First, we have several items to discuss related to our proposed rules on commemorative works. Then there are important area updates related to the Bethesda site and other projects around the capital area. So first, we will start with the commemorative works, and thanks to those who tuned in to the public hearing on March 14th. It was so great to hear the many suggestions and comments that were submitted, and I'm also glad to see the written comments that have also been submitted. I hope you've had a chance to see those. Executive Secretary Merritt Clapsmith will now provide an update on the next steps for the proposed rules, along with some possible revisions for our consideration based on public feedback. Executive Secretary, go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor and Chair. We are making great progress in the rulemaking process. It's been going on a number of months, but we're going to share a schedule up here in each meeting. I have a schedule that shows the steps we're in the midst of and what's moving forward. And we have so many things that are now passed. So we're just looking at what's ahead. Yesterday was the close of the public comment period for the hearing. But what started at the same time and goes through April 5th or April 11th is what's called the public rebuttal comment period. And this is when people can submit comments that are specific to talking about a comment previously made. So it's only for rebuttal comments, not for new comments or unrelated comments. So that is again open on the eComments website through the 11th. Of course, we have our meeting today. And then on the 11th, the same day the rebuttal period closes, we are due as an agency to submit what's called a response to comments letter to the Administrative Law Judge O'Reilly, and I'll talk more about that today. Once we have submitted that letter, the ALJ will then take a month or so to review all of the materials and write a report and include recommendations on next steps that she would advise for this board in relation to the proposed rules. Those next steps could say anything from, I liked all of it and support your rules. You may go forward and adopt them if you choose. It might recommend some updates to some of the language that's been proposed. Or it could say, there's some important issue that I don't think was adequately addressed in previous materials and in the hearing, and I would ask that you go back and make some time to address that. So it could be all manner of responses, but we're hoping for the first. And then after we get the report, the CAAPB board will reconvene and discuss the report and recommendations and make a determination of next steps and whether to vote for adopting the rules or not. Next. So for this meeting, you received a lot of reading material related to the place we are in the rulemaking process. And there's a picture of kind of the four main documents I sent you. I had a cover memo. And then what you see in the bottom right corner was a document where we wrote down every public comment that was submitted in written or spoken form at the hearing, and then a response to each comment from us as the agency. That is a requirement of the rulemaking process to have a, if possible, comment by comment response. The second item, which you see in the top right corner, were proposed revisions to the rules that we sent out for the public hearing. So the public hearing draft, which you had reviewed back in December and was publicly released, anything you see in that document in red text is potential changes to those draft rules. And in that document, in text boxes by each change, a rationale is provided for the change. The document in the top left corner is called the response to comments, and this is the official letter that the agency must submit to the ALJ that contains a number of items, including the two I just covered, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. And then in the bottom left, just in case you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of understanding all the steps in this process, I included Chapter 9 of rulemaking with those details. And what that means is we already went through chapters 1 to 8. Next. And at any time, if somebody has a question, please raise your hand. I can stop and address something at any point. We had our hearing on March 14th It began at 10 a.m. and it went until 12:33. And the hearing was in 3 parts. The first part was an opening by our board chair, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, who gave an overview of what our agency is, the statutory authority we have, and the reason that this board decided to go ahead with the rulemaking. Part 2, we had Carl Crawford and Dr. Gwen Westerman, who were the chairs of our 2 task forces, review briefly for the judge and the members of the public what those task forces did and how they went about drafting the rules. And then the third part, I provided an explanation of the rules and went through highlights of the statement of need and reasonableness. Next. So the public comments from the hearing, we had 17 people who spoke at the hearing, and we had another 8 people who submitted written comments to the e-comments site. So a total of 25 public comments. I kind of broke down below there some of the patterns we saw in who we heard from, but more importantly, the key messages that we heard. And these align really well with the input that the task forces heard and the intent of the proposed rule updates. So the key messages from the comments were to represent Minnesota on the Capitol grounds, make it a welcoming place for all people, expand opportunities within our process for reviewing commemorative works for public input, to focus on inclusion when we make updates to commemorative works on the grounds, and to make the process easy to understand. Next. I shared this quote. This is from the person who commenter number 14 at the public hearing, and in the document of comments and responses, you can see each person by name. But this really summed up nicely the big picture of what we heard. And it says, commemorative art is one of the very public ways that we tell our story to ourselves and to visitors. That art shows not just who we are, but who we think we should be. Next. So I'm going to jump now into going through the key items that staff is bringing forward to you as recommendations for additional revisions to the proposed rules that we would submit to the administrative law judge. So the first we have here is to add 2 new definitions. And this specific recommendation came from the administrative law judge herself within the hearing. And she said, you know, throughout the rules, we hear the terms public hearing and public meeting, and it's not completely clear to me how those are different. And so we added 2 new definitions here that differentiates, with a public meeting being any meeting where members of the public get together, and it wouldn't even have to be hosted by the CAAPB board. It could just be hosted by someone else discussing commemorative works. And then public hearings be the formal process of meeting and hearing public comment by the board itself. The next set of revisions apply to both subpart 3 and subpart 7. These revisions provide additional opportunities for public input at the stage in the process when an application has been received and the staff are reviewing the application to determine whether or not they think it meets the conditions necessary to proceed with looking at an addition or considering modification or removal. So once that decision is made, there's then the next phase, which is working through all the conversation and design and discussion about how to proceed and if all the criteria are met. But the step of just determining whether it meets conditions really might be the step that's of very high level of public interest, and the rules as we had drafted them provided opportunity for public input, but we didn't provide as many details as it sounded from the comments that people might like to see. So what we've recommended for both subpart 3, which would be for new works, and for subpart 7, which is conditions for modification or removal, is first that we commit to providing really good information on our website from the moment an application comes in, that we update regularly saying, here's the application, we're now at this step in the review. Anytime we write an interim report that's going to go to the board, that is put out there, and that we're actively identifying each of the opportunities for public involvement. Adding an explicit statement that we would host at least one public meeting and a 30-day comment period that would inform what staff are writing up as far as a recommendation to the board. So it wouldn't just be staff reviewing conditions and making a recommendation to the board. It would be staff doing so as informed by input from the public. And then finally, that the board would meet and vote and would allow public comment at that meeting. So these steps, again, have been suggested to add specificity around public information input for both subpart 3 and subpart 7. Next item, please. This is a simple one, but I'm sharing it because we have 3 separate comments on one word in our rules, and that word was overwhelming. As a condition for modification and removal, we had said that one of the conditions is that there has been sustained, overwhelming, and documented public objection to the work. And 3 different people commented and said, how do you know if you've met the threshold of overwhelming? It seems like it's open to a lot of interpretation, and that they felt the word might set such a high bar that nobody would be able to demonstrate that they had met the threshold. And so we are proposing instead to use the word broad-based. And broad-based specifically in definition refers to involving or attracting many different types of people, which had been the intent, is that we want to feel that what is being proposed is something that a lot of different types of people would understand and share that objection to the work, as opposed to it being a lot of people just from one particular constituency. Next item. All right, as I mentioned, we'd be making similar revisions in 7 that we did to 3, but we have one more thing we've added to 7. Because the application is for modification or removal, we've explicitly said that at the stage at which discussion is occurring about whether or not the conditions can be met for the application, that we would actively work to find an individual or group that represents or is connected to the artist or sponsor of the original work, so that they are able to provide some context for the intent and spirit in which the original work went in, and that we would specifically invite them, if they chose, to attend the public meeting that we have and to speak. All right, next one. So the remainder of the edits that were proposed are clarification items, and there's an example here, so I would think of them as copy edits. This statement here looks like it's a big change, but it's really just restructuring some of the words and the sequencing of the sentence so that it's a little more straightforward and easy to read. So throughout the rule drafting, we've always looked for opportunities to do that, and not surprisingly, each time you do the review, you find a few more. So with that, I'd like to pause and welcome comments, questions, discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Executive Secretary. Let's take a look here. It looks like Ms. Badgerow has her hand raised. Please go right ahead.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I've always believed that any complex government action is just as good as the staff work that supports it. And I just want to commend the staff in this case because you've taken a really layered, nuanced, complex set of issues and words. You've simplified them. I think your summary is very thorough and thoughtful. I think it's easy to wrap your head around these comments and these fixes, even down to typos and small fixes, but there's some larger issues that you've dealt with very head on. I think the funding, of course, is a confounding issue that really we are not in a position to address because of just the state of the affairs in state government. So I appreciate that you acknowledged people have that issue and suggested perhaps some sources of funding that they might approach. And I think that's the best we can do. So I think this is an amazing job, and I'm blown away by the work that you all have done. Thank you.
Thank you. I would associate myself with those comments for sure. We're grateful for the staff. Any other questions from members? Well, Executive Secretary, I think you were very thorough in your presentation and also in the materials. I think we have a good sense of the changes here to the rules. So I wanted to also just turn it back then. If I don't see any more hands, so I just want to be clear. There's no more questions. I'm not asking for them. I just want to make sure you all feel heard here. Okay, so with that, I appreciate all of the hard work that went into this. I think, Executive Secretary, you are going to walk us through the draft response letter that we'll need to submit to Judge O'Reilly along with these revisions to the proposed rules for our consideration based on the input. So please go right ahead and share that draft letter with us.
Yeah, Peter, if you could pull up the next slide. So in your materials was a draft response to comments letter. I believe it was maybe 17 pages. And this is required as the culmination of the activities through the public hearing and the public comment. And under procedures, we're required to submit a preliminary response to comments letter right before the public hearing comment closed. So I sent something to the ALJ yesterday, which was exactly what was provided in your packet. And what I'm asking today is for the board to consider and hopefully approve the response to comments letter, which would then become the final version, which would be the officially submitted version for the public record. So what the response for comments letter does is it reiterates that the agency feels that it's demonstrated the need and reasonableness of the proposed rules, which was extensively addressed in the SONAR document previously prepared. That we demonstrate that we have looked at and replied to all public comments, which goes to the comment letter and responses you saw, and that we summarize any key questions and suggestions that we heard in the comments for each subpart, provide a specific response to each of those, and then recommend any possible revisions. So if you took the document that just showed the redlined revisions proposed and the document that had all of the public comments and responses, and you merged them together and added a little bit more information, that's what created the response to comments letter. So it's laid out, most of it. It goes through each subpart. It identifies some key comments where people had questions or recommendations. There is a response from the agency to that. And then if it seems that a revision should be contemplated to the proposed rules, then that text of that revision is shown in there. And if there are comments, for instance, that Ms. Badgerow referred to about people wanting, or some people wanting to see a pool of funding available to applicants instead of everybody having to fundraise on their own, that we did not feel were able to address in the rules, then we responded to that, explained the rationale, but then there would be no revision after that. So that's the pattern of the letter, and that is what we submit to the judge. So what the judge takes the response to comments letter, all of the hearing testimony, reads through all of the other documents, and again, this is over the next 4 to 6 weeks, and then she writes up a report and recommendations, which will then be submitted back to the agency. So in order for us to go ahead and submit a response to comments letter, I would ask that you guys pass a resolution just supporting our agency to submit that letter, a draft of which was provided in the packet. And this would simply say the Capital Area Architectural and Planning Board approves the submission of the response to comments letter, which includes revisions to the proposed rule amendments, to Administrative Law Judge Ann O'Reilly for her review and consideration of proposed amendments to Minnesota Rules 2400.2040 through 2400.2705. Executive Secretary Clapp Smith is authorized and directed to act as the board's representative in submitting the response to comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Executive Secretary. I appreciate the suggested changes in the proposed rules. Members, if you have any questions or comments, I will take those now. And Ms. Badgerow, I see that your hand is raised. Please go right ahead.
Well, I'm calling the question to that extent. I'm sure there's maybe a question or two, but I think the memo is excellently done, and I'm moving its approval.
Yep, thank you so much. It has been moved that we approve the resolution, the language that is before us on the screen. Can I get a second?
Second, this is Alicia Belton.
Thank you, Ms. Belton. So with that, members, we are going to go ahead and proceed in a roll call vote in alphabetical order. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't. Hold on. Ms. Clapp-Smith?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment for people that might be joining us by live stream clarification. If there's any question. At this time, this is not the board voting on rules language. It's voting on proposed language that the administrative law judge reviews and comments on. So the official vote on the language itself by the board will occur after we get the report recommendation from the administrative law judge. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. So we will now proceed with a roll call vote in alphabetical order on the motion. Ms. Badgerow.
Aye.
Ms. Belton.
Aye.
Representative Freiberg. Representative Freiberg. We'll come back to you. Mr. McLean.
Aye.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
And as chair, I vote aye as well. I'm going to come back around to Representative Freiberg. Okay. All right. Well, we do have enough votes here, so the motion does prevail. I wanted to take a moment just to thank the executive secretary, our principal planner, Musty, and Ms. Dotson for the extraordinary amount of work that has gone into this rulemaking process. We are all just so much better for it. And the preparation of the hearing went incredibly well. And I just so pleased. The CAP board really set a vision, and the task forces went to work, and you all have been able to just bring it together. So I just wanted to pause for a moment, and if you have the capacity to do so within Teams, just go ahead and give a little applause to this team for all of their incredible work. So thank you so much. Okay. Next step in the rulemaking process is complete. So thank you so much. So we're going to transition now. We're going to talk about some updates related to the planning for and the future use of the Bethesda Hospital site. As you may recall, in our December meeting, our December hearing, Fairview's agreement for its use and emergency shelter comes to an end at the end of May. There is significant work underway related to our planning and design review in the coming weeks and months. I also just wanted to take a moment to just be specific here to say that today's discussion will focus on the board's authority as it relates to land use planning and design review. There are also other venues to consider and gather input on the care delivery proposed through the health department's public interest review process and legislation introduced that would provide an exception to the statutory hospital construction moratorium. So we are going to focus on our locus here within the CAP board, and Principal Planner Musty has detailed much of this in the memo included in your packets and what is posted online. We are also joined by advisor Michael Bjornberg and representatives from Fairview and Acadia to answer any questions. Principal Planner Musty, please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members, and I'm excited actually to bring you a quick, and it's an informational, no action items today, informational update on the visioning for the Bethesda site. As board chair mentioned, we do have with us today representatives of Fairview and Acadia who are partnering on the new vision together for a new mental health, Fairview Mental Health Hospital. I will have them introduce themselves to you, and then I'll ask them to return in a few minutes later to speak to the emerging vision. The Fairview Acadia team that are here in the team's meeting, will you please peek in to introduce yourselves and say, let me turn this off for a second. Peek in and introduce yourselves and say hello, starting with Fairview. Mia from Fairview.
Hi, thank you so much, Peter. My name is Mia Taney. I'm sitting in for Trudy Trisla today, who actually might be who's jumping into the lobby right now as well. So I support our strategic transactions and partnerships for the system, and I'm excited to be here to listen and be part of the meeting. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Christian Fomvold, and I'm the Vice President of Design and Construction for Fairview Health Services. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
And on to Webb.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Webb Embry with Acadia Healthcare. Excited to be partnered with the Fairview team and all the great collaboration with Peter and Michael and the CAP group. I am Vice President for Facilities Design and Construction with Acadia. Turn it over to Chip. Chip, you're muted.
Yep. Talking muted, yes. I'm Chip Hill with Snaggle Hill Architecture. I'm the architect for the project, working with Fairview and Acadia, and very excited to be working with CAP Board as well.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to spend a little time here, and then we will turn back. Like I said, we'll be back with them soon to explain the evolving vision for the site. And before that, my advisor Michael Bjornberg will speak to the important building and site research he's been doing related to the viabilities for adaptive reuse, historic resources, and advisor recommendations in regards to the proposed demolition. First, I will summarize the teamwork, the site concept visioning activities, and the stakeholder reviews so far. The memo that board members have and is posted at the CAP board website is a detailed summary of all these activities so far and also shows the steps ahead. The bottom line is that the Fairview Acadia team is working through a collaborative pre-application stage, and the formal timelines of permitting process are getting close to starting. Given the importance and complexity of the site, several levels of work need to start and evolve in parallel. And I know they are working. I know the Fairview and Acadia team has plenty to do internally on their end, as well as choosing a very collaborative path through the CAP board process. CAP board staff and advisor team has been meeting regularly with the Fairview Acadia team about every 2 weeks. Attached to those sessions are meetings with key partners such as the city, Department of Safety and Inspection, site plan review, the couple planning partners such as Move Minnesota and Capital Region Watershed District. They have gotten a head start. The Fairview Acadia team has gotten a head start on 2 elements of our formal review process. The advisor's design review group combines CAP board's advisor review and neighborhood review steps. Similar to the meeting process for 590 Park Apartments, some of you remember, across the street, the advisor's design group is a group of about 10 to 12 stakeholders and community members made up of the property owners of buildings across the street in every direction, Capitol Heights Block Club members, and members from the institutions and services located on Charles Street, right across. Advisor Bjornberg and myself, with the oversight of Merit and occasional participation of Advisor Lemon and Advisor Chevalier, have convened the group, that larger group, twice and have conveyed feedback to the development team. You'll also see listed here that I've issued a preliminary review memo identifying zoning and design regulations, and we've had some consultations with friends at the State Historic Preservation Office. So Advisor Bjornberg will now give a preview of his work developing an advisor's building and site summary, which is a compendium of documents related to the existing facility, the site, and its context.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, Chair Flanagan and board members. My name is Michael Bjornberg. I'm a registered architect and a CAP board advisor. And in that role as a CAP board advisor, I've been working with the Fairview Acadia team, community, and CAP board staff as we look at this proposed development or redevelopment of the Bethesda Hospital site. Bethesda Hospital Complex is located 2 blocks north of the Capitol, as you can see on the map on the right. And then the view on the the view on the left is aerial looking at Bethesda from the west. And you can see the complex of buildings plus the structured parking ramp with a Skyway link. Okay. Next. This is current Bethesda Hospital building. It's a complex that has housed services for respiratory care, complex medical care, brain injury services, and medical behavioral sciences. In that capacity, it has served more than 2,000 individuals annually. That's for 90 years. Fairview's stated maximum capacity at the current complex is 355 beds. As of 2009, it provided 102 staff beds and employed 704 employees. It was one of only 2 long-term acute care hospitals in Minnesota. Next. I thought, those who know me know I love getting into the history of things and all the stories that are embedded in it. On the left is an early 1932 rendering for this project as it went up. And on the right, you can see hospital care in the day. When its building was originally constructed in 1932, it's had a series of additions through the years. It was Bethesda originally bought the site for $71,000. The building was designed by Thomas Ellerby and Associates and was built for $500,000. It opened with 150 beds, and the dedication speaker was Dr. William Mayo. It has a long and rich history of medical innovation, nursing education, relationship to the Swedish Lutheran community, and to Gustavus Adolphus College. Next. Some current pictures. Bethesda hospital use ended in November 2020. At that time, it had the capacity of 355 beds. Subsequent uses included a step-up shelter and COVID respite. That current lease expires on May 31st, 2002. Okay. Next. Here's a couple just site plans to get a sense of the overall property that Fairview owns. On the left are the current conditions. The 1932 building, the arrow is your entry, as it's on the east side of the building facing the therapeutic garden. There's an addition on the south side, the 1962 addition called the Reverend Benson Memorial Wing, 1962. The west wing is the Holcomb Lundholm Sterner Memorial Wing, 1967. The northwest wing is the Reverend Richard Hillstrom Wing. That was 1984. And we'll talk about Reverend Hillstrom later. He had a significant impact in this facility. The parking structure, the open space south of the parking structure, the half a block approximately surface parking of theirs, and then the therapeutic garden. And we found in our community meetings that therapeutic garden is really been an asset to the community and something they really do care about. On the right is, after demolition, the proposed facility and proposed expansion. It retains the entry on the east side towards the park, and in this case, probably not, wasn't the case in the original building. The expansion is planned. Next slide. And this is just that manifests itself this way in the site plan and in just an early look at the project. And so we'll talk to that again later. Next slide, Peter. As we've gone through this and looked at what might happen with demolition and what might happen with a new facility and what does that mean, I've looked at the reuse viability. The hospital complex has a high value as a built resource at 336,000 square feet with structured parking ramp and a surface parking lot. It has the potential to serve a variety of functions, as has been seen recently when it was repurposed for COVID care and homeless shelter use. But the long-term potential of the existing building for continued reuse as a new hospital is likely not viable. This is due to the greater floor-to-floor heights needed for enhanced HVA systems, the industry's evolution in patient care methods and modern accessibility requirements. New healthcare facilities have changed dramatically since the original 1932 building, and additions were constructed. Next. My consideration of demolition. It's really difficult to see a complex that has served the city of St. Paul, the healthcare community, and the capital area so well for close to 100 years be considered for demolition and replacement. Demolition should only be considered if the replacement facility is of substantial benefit to the community in the capital area. Upon review of the proposal for a new facility and the request for a demolition of the existing facility, CAP board staff and advisors recommend that any demolition permit be tied to a specific design concept and proposal being developed for continuing similar hospital land use. The new building should be constructed of long-lasting materials. The siding should respond to existing community patterns and be a capital area asset. The therapeutic garden should remain a neighborhood amenity, and there should be consideration of development of a pedestrian experience along its edges. Next. We've looked at historic designation and what impact that might have on this. And from our preliminary research and discussions with SHPO, It would seem that the complex would require further study to determine if it is considered eligible for historic designation. There have been a variety of additions to the building, so looking at how much of that original building is left would be one we'd want to look at. To be eligible for the register, it must demonstrate the following 3 points: significance, context, and integrity. And this process begins upon a request from a property owner or nomination for historic designation from another party. This process takes time and requires an interested party and a property owner's interest in securing historic designation. But once the study is performed and a nomination is submitted for consideration to the State Review Board, upon approval, it is then submitted to the keeper of the National Register in Washington, D.C. for review and acceptance. But fundamentally, the current property owner has not expressed a desire to pursue historic designation, which would preclude initiating the nomination process. Next. Historic mitigation considerations. As we've done the research and walked through this building, the current Bethesda complex, particularly as driven by Reverend Hillstrom, has retained a significant amount of its history through its artwork, sculptures, medical artifacts, photos, and written materials. And the history of this place, Reverend Hillstrom had determined he wanted original artwork in every room in this hospital. There are hundreds of pieces of original art still in this building. There are stained glass windows. Just the integration of art is just commendable. So some consideration should be given to celebrating the history and contributions of Bethesda Hospital. This could be expressed in a variety of ways, including retaining the existing cornerstone laid by Reverend Mattson, L.B. Benson, Dr. E.E. Ryden, Dr. Ekblad, and Dr. O.O. Holcomb. Retaining the house museum and making it available for the public, integrating artwork and sculpture into the new development and site, consideration of reuse of historic names, plaques, and tributes into the new facility, and then documentation of the building history and site, considering using HAB's Level 2 documentation guidelines, which are the lesser restrictive of the 2 levels of documentation. Next. Here's a couple images. Paul Granlund sculpture up in front of the hospital called the Bethesda Angel in the Garden Park Fountain. As some know, Paul Granlund had a studio at Gustavus, so again, that connection with Gustavus. And again, the amount of artwork inside this facility is just amazing. And what they have done to catalog and to archive and to really create a history of the medical advancements is just outstanding.
Thank you, Michael. So next, we will hear a few words from the Fairview and Acadia leads, followed by a real summary presentation of the basic site concept by architect Chip Hill from the Acadia team. Mia, Christian, and Webb also wanted to be available today to answer any questions the board members may have. So with that, we'll turn it over to Chip. Or to Mia, Chip or Mia, I think either of you.
Yeah, thanks again, Peter. I believe Trudy's actually had a chance to join the call now. Trudy, if you're on the line, did you want to do a quick introduction and say a few words?
Certainly, and I apologize. I was on the phone, had some trouble accessing your team site, but I'm happy to be here again today. I'm Trudy Trisla. I'm Chief Administrative Officer at Fairview, and am excited to be back and talking about the advancement of this new vision. And I think you will be as excited as we are about this facility and the opportunity to serve patients in this community for generations to come. Just a quick clarifying, just for clarification, the hospital is named the Fairview Acadia Mental Health Hospital. Just by way of clarification, I know it's confusing. Our Bethesda Hospital is actually operating in a different site that it holds our long-term acute care hospital. So that's why we refer to it as the Capitol Boulevard site, and we'll be communicating that new vision and name we already have, and will be as the site becomes up and operational and treating patients once building consumes. So again, I think the pictures have 1,000 words, and that's why, at least for us and our Acadia team, very excited to see the visual of the new hospital and what it will mean for patients. So I'll turn it over. If it's Webb or Chip, I think it might be Chip. I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, I'll take it from here. Looking at the site plan on the screen, the footprint of the new behavioral health hospital is in brown, and it's a 144-bed new inpatient facility. It will be about roughly 105,000 square feet and 5 stories in height. And you can see with the red dashed outline on the plan, that's the existing hospital footprint. We'll have a considerably smaller footprint on the site, and certainly much smaller in area. The existing facility is about 336,000 square feet and 10 stories, as shown with that red dash line. This new facility will be purpose-built for behavioral health care, and it will include the latest innovations and state-of-the-art care for this underserved patient population in your community. The site itself falls about 30 feet from the North Capitol Boulevard side down to Park Street, and the building therefore kind of steps down the site. It will appear on the Capitol Boulevard side about 3 stories tall, and on the Park Street side, it will appear to be 5 stories tall. The main entrance to the hospital will be aligned on axis with the green space across the street, and as Peter mentioned, the green space will remain as is after this project is complete. We have planned for a phase 2 expansion indicated at the top of the screen with the blue outline. That will be an additional 48 beds that would raise the total bed capacity up to 192 in the future. And that new addition presents itself to Como Avenue to the north and Park Street to the west. The new hospital will also be connected to the existing parking deck. The parking deck will remain in service, and the facility will require roughly half of the 400 plus capacity in that existing deck. So we've been speaking to Peter and CAAPB Board and Move Minnesota about how the parking deck is addressed in kind of the broader community here. And then the aesthetic of the new hospital will consist of a combination of stone, masonry, glass storefront, and metal panels. And it does also include a pair of tower elements that speak to the intersections around the site, the Capitol Boulevard and Como intersection, and the Como and Park Street intersection. And that also, the 2 tower elements are also the locations of the patient activity spaces, kind of the day rooms, if you will, within the patient floors of the facility. So it does speak to what's happening inside the building. Peter, in terms of the comparison slide, yes, there we go. Basically, the top line distinction between a new acute care hospital and a behavioral health hospital is important. It has a bearing upon traffic, parking, et cetera. Behavioral health hospitals are generally a much less intense use than an acute care hospital. An example would be that the traffic generated by a behavioral health hospital is typically about 1/4 of what you would see for an acute care hospital. So just a much less intense use than the former hospital. The building area, 336,000 square feet existing versus 105,000 square feet new. Height, 10 stories versus 5 stories. Just once again, just speaks to the lesser impact of this new program on the site and the surrounding area. And bed capacity, once again, 144 beds initially compared to the 355 within the existing facility, although we are planning for expansion up to 192 beds future. And then, as Michael noted, age is a huge factor here. And we did evaluate the potential for reuse of the existing facilities, and we concluded that it's really not viable for a contemporary, state-of-the-art, purpose-built behavioral healthcare hospital. It doesn't set up well at all internally for the types of and sizes of nursing units and all the other amenities that are needed for this specific patient population. And with that, I'll turn it back.
Thank you very much. And I at this point, Board Chair, I think questions and discussion. There's been a lot of work and more detail available, and this is just a visit. We will be coming back with the team in the future, maybe for decision making, but maybe even just for informational purposes in the coming months.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Musty, and thank you so much to our presenters. I'm going to open it up to the board for questions, and I will start with you, Senator Pappas. Please go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This may be more of a comment than a question, because I understand that it's a hospital that owns this site. I just didn't hear too much about the kind of the bones of the building. It just seems to me like a shame to tear down a building that has still potential to be used, especially when we have a huge affordable housing shortage. So I'm just wondering if maybe our advisor, Mr. Bjornberg, could just comment on, you said it was not adequate for a hospital, but are there other reuses that obviously, Alina didn't consider? Fairview didn't consider.
Mr. Bjornberg, please go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair Flanagan and Senator Pappas. Yes, we did look at that, and certainly it could be used for other things, as I said, but it is Fairview Acadi's desire to continue hospital use on this site and provide that care in current state-of-the-art facilities. It is significantly, it's probably 3-4 times larger than what they would need, which would involve some demolition of the building. And I suspect by the time you did that, all we would have left of the original building is that one facade that we do see. And then you are stuck, so to speak, with the limited floor-to-floor height and the way the building is laid out, which does not conform to the way hospitals run now with the way nurses' stations work and the facilities. So yeah, if it could be for another use, which would then involve the owner selling all the property for that use, because they're really not in the, as far as I know, they're not in the business of doing other developments other than delivering state-of-the-art healthcare.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. James Garrett Jr., thank you. I'm excited that you've joined us. Please go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I have a question concerning the demolition of, I understand the additions to the building, but the demolition of the original Art Deco building from 1932, it is an architectural treasure. And it is something that, these are the types of structures that we have in our city that once they're gone, they're gone. They can never be duplicated or replicated. The way in which those materials and methods of construction are done are gone. They're lost arts. I find it hard to believe that there's no way to keep the original Art Deco tower, sort of the iconic portion of the building, and gut that and integrate that somehow into a new facility. I'd like to know a little bit more about why that's not possible.
Mr. Bjornberg, would you like to weigh in here?
Sure.
I'm also happy to open it up to others here, but Mr. Bjornberg, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair and board members. Yeah, I agree. I looked at that. What I found interesting is it's what happened inside the building that is the most significance. I looked at the history of who the architects were, which Ellerby Associates, they have a long career of medical facilities, a relationship with the Mayo Hospital. And this building does not show up in any of their company's retrospectives, any of their promotional material, which was kind of a flag to me, as they did not even see it as a significant facility in their mind. It is beautiful architecture, no doubt. I do think the only thing we see that's left of that original building is that front facade. And then that tower would likely dictate your floor-to-floor heights through the building. So just looking at that is, do you save just the tower? What does that mean when you do that? Yeah, those are all tough decisions. And I guess I would let Fairview Acadia talk to how they've looked at saving parts of the building. I do think that there are ways you could reuse building materials on the site, whether that's site walls or park features or some things like that, so that you do still have some of that there. I was really struck by walking through their house museum, how much history of what the facility has actually done and contributed to is saved. Far more than I've seen in any other building, including the state capitol, that is saved, that recalls what has happened there. And I think that is probably of far more value than what I've seen architecturally. And anybody who knows me knows I love to save old things, but that stuff inside there is incredible. And then the hundreds, literally hundreds of pieces of original artwork.
Thank you, Mr. Bjornberg. I would invite anyone from Mount Fairview who might want to speak to this as well.
I'll defer to the expert construction leadership on the phone, so, and Acadia as well. So Christian or Webb, do you want to address the question?
Sure, this is Webb. I'd be happy to provide a little further insight there. James, appreciate your question. You know, one of the things that we often look at when it's adaptive reuse is being considered, starts with the patient first in mind. And a lot of the best practices that have been developed come to patient safety, and you know that starts with the spaces that they spend the majority of their time in, the central portion of the building, the group activity spaces, noisy activity, quiet activity, consult spaces, as well as the length of the patient unit itself, with the corridors, the patient rooms, the sight lines, and I'll defer to Chip in a moment here, but just the way that the building is structurally set up and some of the constraints imposed there, both from a width and ceiling height perspective, make for some concerns around delivering best practice of care when it comes to patient safety, nurse observation, staffing efficiency, when we look at those key areas within those patient units, if we were to try preserving that original, tower building, as you mentioned there, not to mention some of the complexity around redistribution of utilities and mechanical systems. But I will pass it over to Chip if there are some additional points you'd like to add in for us.
Sure. Michael had mentioned the floor heights are a concern, obviously, with the contemporary requirements for hospitals. There's just more height required to be able to fit in the systems that are now mandated. And secondly, just the geometry of the original hospital, the original 1931 hospital, doesn't work for the size and shape of contemporary behavioral health units in terms of number of patient rooms and, as Webb mentioned, sight lines and basically properly configuring a safe environment for that patient population.
I'll just add that I do this work every day, and that we regularly, my firm does this type of work, and we're asked to come in and do adaptive reuse. We're asked to come in and reuse buildings that were not intended for the new purposes and functions that the new owners and clients have for them. And there's a lot more possibility than what it's. I mean, it's a lot easier to just start over, obviously. Tabula rasa, start over. It's easy. But in terms of thinking through architectural sort of legacy and architectural heritage, and something that's been iconic in this city my entire life, on the hill, Bethesda on the hill there, I feel like it deserves an extra level of care and thought and intention. And ultimately, it may not be possible, but I'm not hearing anything that tells me that it was really investigated to the level that I would hope that it would be investigated. A historic Art Deco building. There's not too many of them left. I think a lot of care and thought needs to go into it before we agree to demolish part of our architectural legacy here.
Mr. Garrett, I appreciate that. And, that thoughtfulness is one of the reasons why we are grateful that you serve on this body. We will have additional conversations about this site, but I absolutely appreciate your feedback. Is there any other questions? Ms. Belton, please go ahead.
Oh, okay, thanks. I would just weigh in here. Adaptive reuse is tough. And it breaks my heart a little bit that, as I'm looking at the report here that has been presented, that we would go this route. And so, I would echo what James has said in that, just as we move forward and making all these considerations to pay attention to what is there. If I understand the plan correctly, that the garage is going to be preserved. Is that for the parking structure? So, okay, so yes, that makes sense. You're reusing something that's already there. But, if we cannot get to a path where we don't reuse it, I would strongly encourage looking at parts of the building that could be incorporated into a new building. Door frames, whatever, as part of retaining that historical perspective as well. I didn't hear anything about, what are you doing in terms of sustainability measures? Are you pursuing any kind of certifications for the building? If you're going new, what kind of energy efficiencies are you planning for? So that would be my other comment. But I would really encourage you to think about, how can you preserve parts of this building? It's the embodied carbon that is already in the building. That's really important to be thinking about as you move forward as well. So I appreciate hearing the logic and planning that's taken place so far, but just would echo those comments that we be mindful of what's been there.
Thank you, Ms. Belton. And my hope is that Fairview and Acadia, you take that into consideration as you are working on this site. Are there any other questions or comments here? We do not have any official action to take on this topic today, but this is a good first step here. Executive Secretary.
Thank you. I would just like to encourage everyone to go over when you have some time and take a look at the museum they have within there. It's just one room with history of the building and activities that have happened there. It's very well done and very interesting. It's quite remarkable how much Bethesda has had points in time where it was involved in something that was quite remarkable in the medical community. So some firsts happening there. So again, encourage people to go by and take a look.
Mr. McLean.
Thanks. To that point, I was just curious, and forgive me, or maybe it might be early for this, but is there any plan to maintain the both the kind of art that's already in the building, or any kind of similar to the museum mentioned? Is there any thought to incorporating that into the new facility?
Yeah, I will take that. We're in a process. We have lots of wonderful mementos at a number of our hospitals that relate to our role as a caregiver in this community. And we are looking at ways to commemorate our services in a variety of different ways, and are kind of finalizing the plan in terms of current sites and any benefactors who may have contributed. We do have some factors around our status as an organization. So we're really kind of developing the plan more globally, and are happy to talk about that at the next session.
I think we would be eager to hear that. So thank you, Ms. Trisla. Executive Secretary.
Yeah, I was interested to hear Ms. Trisla about the conversation of how you as an organization, represent your history and your contributions to the community, and that some of the information that's, say, in that room or on that site now would perhaps become part of a collection that belongs to you as an organization. And it made me think about when we have buildings like this and we're having kind of historic commemoration, is that a place-based activity or is it an organization-based activity? And I think that's worth us continuing to talk about as plans are made. So, for instance, does the memorabilia there, does it move and live with the organization that owns it, or does it live and stay on location?
Or at the site where the care is being provided in terms of the long-term acute care hospitals. Those are all the things that, we're kind of thinking through, and those are certainly things to think about and consider, because those services are being provided at other sites. And so there's aspects of honoring the continued work at those locations. But again, it's a broader question, and we're working through what the opportunities are and what the options are.
Thank you for that. We look forward to further updates. I'm going to continue to move us along here. Again, thank you to everyone for this presentation, and Mr. Bjornberg, thank you so much for digging in on all this and reporting back. We appreciate it. This is why our advisors advise. So thank you so much. I am actually going to bring us back in the agenda, and we actually didn't have a full vote. So now that we do have a full quorum, I would like us to come back to the resolution with regards to the response to comment. So we're going to come back here, and I guess I'm looking at my advisor here.
If we can maybe get the
If we can get the resolution back up on the screen. Perfect. And we are going to do this once again. So I am going to request a motion to approve the resolution that is in front of us on the screen once again. And Ms. Badger, would you like to go ahead and do that for us?
With pleasure, Lieutenant Governor. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Badger. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Belton, thank you so much. I will go ahead then and call on board members in alphabetical order. Ms. Badger?
Aye.
Ms. Belton?
Aye.
Representative Freiberg?
Aye.
Mr. Garrett?
Aye.
Mr. McLean?
Aye.
Senator Pappas?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The resolution is passed. Thank you for doing that with us. Once again, quorum is a little tricky when we are in the middle of the legislative session, so I appreciate your flexibility here. So members, in your packet for this meeting included a number of updates and a memo from Principal Planner Musty on other projects in the capital area. There is some news related to a communication that board staff received from Seritage and their intent to pause engagement and design work on the Sears site. And Mr. Musty, I would ask that you just share a short update on that now.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And yeah, I don't have the quote in a slide, but the long story short, for the Sears site urban village update is that they are on a pause. That we, after about a year of meetings and building relationships with their team, directly with their engineers, working with the city, we have obtained some good feedback, but then I think they are monitoring the larger rent control issue that is evolving in the city, and they, among a lot of other developments, have slowed activity, and so they've asked us to officially pause any of our outreach or any collaboration with them in looking at the site or developing planning and design with them.
Thank you for that, Mr. Musty. Members, do you have any questions or comments on this topic or any other updates from the memo? Mr. McLean.
Thanks. This is just actually, and sorry if you covered this already, but just on the last topic, what like that, it sounded like that will be coming back to the board at some point, but like for what exactly? Because I assume it doesn't require a conditional use permit like when it was looking at transitioning to a shelter temporarily. If it's going back to a hospital use, but is there anything like that will have to come back to the board for a decision, or is it more just kind of an update and input as on design and things like that?
I would like to, Mr. Musty, or
Sure.
Go ahead.
If I just had a two-part question, sorry to interrupt, but maybe this is more just a curiosity, and I appreciated the kind of historical background. That's always interesting. I was curious if Advisor Bjornberg knows just why it was originally called Bethesda Hospital. I don't know, is that a family name or is that a biblical name? Just curious if that kind of came up as you were doing that historical research.
Mr. Bjornberg, do you want to answer that question first, and then I will turn it back over to Mr. Musty?
Certainly. Chair Flanagan and Board Member McLean. Bethesda has 2 books on the history of the building. I'd love to have coffee and we can page through it and all the beautiful photos and stuff. And I'd say you could write a book on this, but they already did that. So yeah, it's certainly in there and we could find that out, but you can find it's like a rabbit hole. It is fascinating. So I will look at that when I get home, and if there's a reason it's Bethesda, I'll let you know.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Musty, go right ahead.
Yes, on the zoning, a little bit in the weeds, and James, I'm happy to answer this on the phone or after. It's to be determined whether this is a conditional use permit as a hospital in our use table, or whether it's a non-conforming hospital use. Either sort of circle in back to each other where we do need to adhere to most of our code. So until we get a formal application in and know what they are proposing exactly, it is hard to determine. So I'll be working with our Attorney General, our attorney, CAP Board's attorney, to resolve that very soon. As soon as we know more about what the actual proposal will be. Long story short, though, for projects of this size, likely the CAP Board will we typically, the tradition has been that permitting will come before the board. Conditional use permit would require that.
Thank you, Mr. Musty. Executive Secretary, go ahead.
Just very quickly, I looked up and found that the word Bethesda is derived from the biblical pool of Bethesda, which in Hebrew means house of kindness.
Well, that's perfect. Thank you for looking that up, Executive Secretary. Let's see, Senator Pappas, you also had your hand raised. I see it's now down. Just wanted to make sure that you didn't have any questions.
I lowered it because I looked at Mr. Musty's memo and it answered my question. Thank you.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you. Okay. All right. We'll just encourage all of you to continue to ask these good questions, and we'll have the issue of the Bethesda site coming before us again. Mr. Musty, go right ahead.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to
Yep.
mention one item I had highlighted that just came in, a note from St. Paul City School, which is an exciting, if I may, it's a quote, it's a note from
Sure.
Dr. Cavalier. Thank you. So she asked me, or I had asked for an update, and I just wanted to read what she had stated. St. Paul City School received a $450,000 grant. I'm going to put up the slide again of the photo. It's, as you know, as all of you have probably driven past, it's under construction, the new school, St. Paul City School. And here's another updated photo. But the $450,000 grant from the Minnesota Department of Education to use over the next 2.5 years. The resources will support the Family and Community Center at the east side of the building. The team will engage with families and community to partner, and they are on track to welcome students in the fall of 2022. So I just wanted to share that. It's a bit of good news. They have a model that really serves not just their students, but their families comprehensively at the site. So.
Thank you, Mr. Musty. It is exciting to see it going up there on the corner, and it's always fulfilling to see a lot of the work that we have done in our role to be happening in the community. So thank you for that update. That's exciting. Okay, so we have one item left. For a final item today, we're going to take up approval of the minutes from January 18th, 2022. Board members, you received the draft minutes in your meeting materials, and they are posted online. Does any member have a correction or edit to the meeting minutes they wish to propose? Any edits to the meeting minutes? Okay, with that, I will ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 18th, 2022.
So moved.
Thank you, Representative Freiberg. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Motion seconded. We'll now proceed with the roll call vote in alphabetical order. Ms. Badgerow.
Aye.
Ms. Belton.
Aye.
Representative Freiberg.
Aye.
Mr. Garrett.
Aye.
Mr. McLean.
Aye.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion is approved and the meeting minutes are confirmed. Members, this brings us to the conclusion of our agenda for today's meeting. Thank you all again for being part of this discussion. As I discussed earlier, I anticipate that our next meeting will occur in late spring or early summer. So please look out for an email soon with regards to that timing. I know that for our next meeting, the CAAPB board are looking into some hybrid meeting options whereby we can meet in person and still allow some folks to attend online if needed. Please let the executive secretary know if you have a preference in attending in-person meetings or tuning in virtually. So we've reached the end of our meeting. I just want to see if anyone else has any questions, comments, or snide remarks before we wrap up. Peter, your hand is still raised, so I just want to make sure that you always give us lots of good information. So just double checking.
That's
to make
just
sure
left up from the last time.
All right.
I'm sure Peter has a snide remark, though.
No.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. Oh, yes. And Ms. Belton, I wanted to also just acknowledge the award that you received as well. We are just honored and humbled that you are part of the CAAPB board and bringing your expertise, your award-winning expertise to the CAAPB board. So just congratulations to you. It is well-deserved, and just wanted to lift you up for a moment. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been just an honor and joy to serve on this board. So really, thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I am hopeful that at our next meeting, it won't be sleeting outside, but you never know. But thank you so much, everyone. Take good care, stay safe and stay healthy. To our legislators, just sending you the best of luck as we are rocking through the end of this legislative session, and appreciate your service. So Gitchim and Gutch, thank you so much, everyone. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Take good care.